Henry Termeer, the former chairman and chief executive officer of Genzyme, one of the first rare disease biotech CEOs, was a pioneer, was fearless, was a committed advocate for patients, and worked tirelessly to build a company that would ultimately pave the way for rare disease as a viable segment of the life sciences. I have with me tonight two important friends to help honor this incredible man. John Crowley, chairman, one side, and CEO of Amicus, who's also a patient advocate. And Jean-Jacques Bien-Aimé, CEO of BioMarin, who's been one of the many industry executives influenced by all that Henry helped build. I wanted to make sure that we properly honored a man whose influence has been woven into the very fabric of Global Genes as an organization, and who's made an indelible impact on me personally and our organization as a whole. Last year, at this very event, Henry joined us to honor Phil Riley of Third Rock Ventures, who was recognized with the Henry Termeer Lifetime Achievement Award. Belinda, I wanted to let you know that we will continue forward, honoring individuals who, like Henry, have made exceptional strides in rare disease without ever losing sight of who all this work is for. From all of us at Global Genes, we wanted to let you know how much he will be missed. We're honored to have had him be such an important part of our organization, and we hope that we will continue to make him proud as we continue to move forward, committed, helping rare patients and their families.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you for the honor to speak briefly about Henry Termeer. Few, if any of us, would be here this evening if it were not for Henry, and tens of thousands of people living with rare diseases would not be on this earth but for Henry's vision, Henry's risk-taking, his determination, and perhaps more than anything, his compassion as a leader and as a human being. I know that because I worked for Henry, but I know that especially because of those tens of thousands of people whose lives were saved because of Henry's leadership and effort. Two of them are my children, Megan and Patrick. We're now 19 and 22. We as a family, and more broadly, we as a community, thank him and try to carry on in his memory. I thought about, this crazy industry that we work in biotechnology. It's a very new industry, only 41 years old. And in 1983, when a then 35-year-old junior executive from Baxter came to a small little startup in Cambridge, Massachusetts called Genzyme, the rare disease segment of biotechnology did not even exist. Henry was the one who, through his risk-taking, and he always said, I am not in the risk mitigation business. We have to take risks or we will not innovate. We will never help people. His risk-taking and determination are legendary in bringing to patients the first medicine for Gaucher disease. What they were able to do, and think about it, in the late 1980s, through Henry's leadership, they had this crazy notion that you could develop an enzyme replacement therapy for a devastating, fatal genetic disease where there were thought to only be a couple of hundred people living. Many people told him it would never work, that it would never be approved, that you could never build a business on it to invest in other rare disease programs or any disease programs. Henry didn't listen. And he did it. And because of that, today, many decades later, within the Gaucher world, people can thrive and live and have children. That was the risk taker. That was Henry the determined. I'd like to share with you, after the Gaucher launch, in the early 1990s, Henry wasn't contented to stop there. The despite having built an enormously successful business, and I know in his mind it was only the beginning. I'll share with you two very personal experiences that I had in witnessing Henry's compassion as a leader, long before patient advocacy was ever in vogue. Genzyme went on in the late 1990s to develop an enzyme replacement therapy for Fabry disease, another devastating rare disease where no treatments were available. It was tough. In many regards, it was even tougher. Genzyme went through the clinical studies, filed the application for approval in August of 2000 with the FDA. Everybody thinks it's easy and fast to work in the rare diseases. I assure you it's not. It took nearly 3 years before that drug, after the studies were done, after the application was submitted to the FDA. And I remember being in a meeting at the end of 2002, 2.5 years after that application was submitted. And people came in, and it was a very expensive medicine to make, and it was costing the company tens of millions of dollars a year to keep the 60 or so people on that therapy. And all the business case said we should probably give up and move on. And I remember being in the meeting when they presented that case to Henry. And he listened very intently and asked all the intense questions. He was a remarkable businessman. But I'll never forget what he said. He said, "We're not stopping this program, we're pressing on." And then what he didn't say, he did not say, "Because I can't tell my investors we're going to quit," or "I can't tell my board of directors we're going to quit." He said, "We are not stopping this program because I am not going to tell 60 people living with Fabry disease who are on this medicine and doing well that I can't provide it to them anymore. And I am not going to tell thousands of people living with Fabry that we quit." And he didn't. And less than 6 months later. And I got to tell you, sitting there as a young executive at Genzyme and listening to that struck me as something that lived on. Shortly after that, we were developing our medicine. The last vignette I'll leave with you was this, for Pompe disease, even more challenging than Fabry. Unbelievably expensive program, by far the most expensive program in the history of the company. And we were struggling. At one point, we were struggling with the manufacturing, we were struggling with every element of the program you could imagine. And I thought that, gee, maybe we should bring patients in. And I went to Henry and I said, "Henry, I'd like to do an event. We're doing this business planning session. Would you be there?" He said, "Absolutely." I said, "Henry, I'd like to invite a patient." I had selected 8 Pompe patients representing a range of backgrounds, had it all in a PowerPoint deck, and I gave it to Henry, and he kind of glanced at it. And I said, maybe in 5 or 7 minutes, gave him a summary of each of those patients. And I said, "Henry, which one would you like me to invite?" And he looked at me and he said, "Invite them all." Wow. Invite them all. And we did. It was a remarkable meeting, and Henry met and was with every family member, kids on his lap, and he just lived for that, I know. And afterwards, he pulled me aside and he said, "John, send me a note every time," because not one of those kids had yet been treated. "Send me a note every time each of these 8 is treated with that enzyme." And that's how much he cared at an individual level. Certainly for my kids and for so many. So as I think about the legacy as a parent that he leaves and what many of us try to live in this business in biotechnology, think about those words. Invite them all. Belinda, Henry is so very missed by so very many, but he would be proud of what he left behind.
Good evening, everybody. Nicole, thank you for the kind introduction. This is always a very inspiring event, and I can't thank you enough for everything you've done and that Global Genes has done for the rare disease community. Nicole and John, thank you for your moving words about Henry, and I couldn't agree with you more. Belinda, I know you're in this room, actually I can't see very well because of the lights, but if I may ask you to stand up. Belinda Termeer, please stand up. Okay. So Belinda, it is my honor to be able to talk about your husband's commitment to patients with rare diseases, and I hope I can do Henry's legacy justice this evening. Every company in its early days has key moments that define the character and the culture of the company. So they usually revolve around making a decision against the advice of experts and defying conventional wisdom. Actually, I've been guilty of doing that myself a few times. So for Henry, I believe that one of those key defining moments came during his second year at Genzyme. The company had been providing an enzyme replacement therapy for Gaucher's disease that John mentioned earlier. For a National Institute of Health or NIH patients, it was a trial with only one patient. Actually, I think that this patient is very famous at Genzyme. His name is Brian Bourbon. He couldn't be here with us tonight. At that time, he was 3 years old, and his stomach was the size of a basketball because his spleen needed to be removed. After 2 months on treatment, Brian was running around the halls of the NIH. So definitely the treatment was having an effect. So the NIH rushed to expand the trial to 7 more patients who were all adults, and the trial failed miserably. None of the patients other than Brian saw any treatment effect. So this was in 1985. And Henry put together a team of experts to discuss the data. They told him not to bother because gene therapy, this is 1985, gene therapy was around the corner. Actually, I think in 2017, gene therapy is around the corner. But this was a little early at the time. So the NIH published a paper concluding that the enzyme replacement therapy did not work. So at that point, most other biotech CEOs would have walked away and tried something else. And I would say, fortunately for Brian and all the other patients in the world with Gaucher's disease, Henry did not give up. He saw with his own eyes the effect of the treatment on Brian, and he wanted to continue. Remember, this was the very first enzyme replacement therapy trial in the world at the time, and there was much to be learned. It turned out that the NIH didn't have the dosing right. Actually, that has happened before also. Which of course Genzyme quickly figured out. And in 2017, today, Brian is in his 30s, he's married, and is the head of the National Gaucher Foundation. What an amazing story. So Henry had an audacious goal. Nothing else than to change the world. So when he became president of Genzyme in 1983, he knew that he could create a business model for a company to research, develop, and sell therapies for small patients population, and he could change the world. So Henry's vision was his vision to develop and commercialize treatments for very small patients populations where no other companies thought it was worth the investment. So instead of thinking there wasn't enough patients for this to be a viable business, he asked different questions. He said, what would it take to build a business that produces therapies for small patients population? So Henry realized that if he worked to save the life of a child, the system, and I would say society, would organize itself to help not only that child, but others too. His philosophy was treat first and teach the healthcare system after that. That was a very bold approach to drug development at that time, and it was the right thing to do. So I would say the entire orphan drug industry, and specifically BioMarin, we are very grateful that Henry had the audacity to defy the experts and the NIH back in 1985. So at the time, Henry's decision probably seemed insane at best and downright foolish at worst. But his history shows that it was neither. It was a brilliant decision that, with the support of the Orphan Drug Act, ignited the biotech industry's interest in rare disorders. And one of those biotech companies is BioMarin. In the late 1990s, when BioMarin was a fledgling company operating on a wing and a prayer, the founder, John Clark, and the CEO, Grant Dennison at that time, they went to Genzyme with an enzyme replacement therapy product for MPS 1, or mucopolysaccharidosis 1. So by then, Genzyme was a pretty established company and a successful Boston biotech company. And BioMarin was a West Coast startup without a track record. We had no approved therapies, and the company was running out of money. So not surprisingly, BioMarin was repeatedly turned down by Genzyme. In a last-ditch effort, they decided to give it one more shot. So they went back to Boston with a video that showed the children in the clinical study running and playing after receiving treatment. Fortunately for BioMarin, Henry was in that meeting, and he was convinced of the drug's potential. So BioMarin and Genzyme made a deal, and this is the deal with Genzyme that really put BioMarin on the map. If Henry was behind you at that time, he gave you the credibility in the industry and with investors on Wall Street. The deal allowed BioMarin to go public, raise money, to continue its research and development efforts. So I share this story with you not because it is so unusual, also because it is symbolic of how Henry and Genzyme impacted patients with rare diseases, both through Genzyme and through other companies. A few years ago, the Boston Globe wrote an article about the Genzyme diaspora, which is a group of former Genzyme employees that's scattered at Genzyme, and the industry matured. Many of them are CEOs today of biotech companies working on exciting experimental treatments, both in common and rare disorders. So the Globe dubbed it the Genzyme family tree. So for tonight's tribute, we have decided to elaborate on this idea of a Genzyme family tree. It turns out that there are a little more than 30 biotech companies that are founded by Genzyme, ex-Genzyme employees, Genzyme alumni, that we were able to find using online resources. And there are almost 90 former Genzyme executives who are CEOs of biotech companies around the world. So each of the leaves on the Genzyme tree that you can see on the screen represents a company founded or run by an ex-Genzyme employee, about 120 companies. Henry's legacy, though, is even greater than creating a magnificent Genzyme family tree. I think it is better described as a tree of life, and it was the first tree of life in the rare disease community. Today, there are many trees on the landscape, and those of us here tonight are part of that forest. So when Henry created a viable business model, I guess it's a firework or something. They agree, they approve on the light of the chair. So when Henry created a viable business model for companies to develop therapies for rare diseases, startups sprung up, as you can see here. Investors got on board and capital started flowing. Many of the companies in the room today can trace their roots directly or indirectly back to Genzyme and to Henry. If Henry were here today, I think he's talking to us right now. He would see this forest of companies working toward therapies for the thousands of rare diseases that still have no treatments. He would be proud of his contribution to the century of biology. He changed the world for all of us in the rare disease community, and for that I am grateful. In this room tonight, we are a collection of companies, academics, rare disease patients and families who share Henry's passion to change the world. Change happens when we embrace risk, pursue bold science, and have the courage to defy conventional wisdom. As final words, I would like to share a strong belief that I have is that we are today, in 2017, at the cusp of a technological revolution that is going to accelerate innovation in many fields, including medical research, at a pace that we've never seen before. Because we are at the intersection now of information technology, artificial intelligence, and biology that will propel us not just toward better and more treatments, but to cures. We already are moving in that direction with gene therapy, and BioMarin is involved there. But today I'm so excited by what our future holds and the big dreams that will become reality. Instead of creating treatments to manage rare diseases, we will develop cures that make rare disease disappear. Thank you for your attention.